Looking into a notorious historical figure's personal interests can add complexity to one's perception of them. It's surprising to discover that even individuals you and much of the public may dislike have similar interests to your own, especially when it comes to movies. For instance, the infamous dictator from Iraq loved The Godfather, and if you fondly remember cartoons like Tom and Jerry, a notorious dictator from Uganda was a fan too. In this video, we will present you with the favorite films of historical figures with notorious reputations. Pablo Escobar was the head of the world's most powerful drug cartel, which generated $4 billion in annual revenue and caused the deaths of thousands of people, including politicians, police officers, and civilians, as well as Escobar himself. Before he was killed by the National Police of Colombia, Escobar spent over a year in a self-constructed prison called La Catedral as part of a no-extradition agreement. His son, Sebastian Marroquin, visited Escobar in La Catedral and brought him gifts, including movies. Marroquin recalled bringing Escobar the complete filmography of James Bond on VHS, which made him happy as they had spent many weekends of Marroquin's childhood watching James Bond and Charlie Chaplin movies together. He also remembered his father asking if he had seen a movie about American bank robber John Dillinger. Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic of China, is believed to have caused the greatest number of deaths among all dictators, with tens of millions of citizens losing their lives due to his policies such as the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. In his old age, Mao developed a fondness for movies, according to an account by Liu Qingting, who was the Deputy Minister of Culture and supplied films for Mao. Although Mao typically watched films at a slow pace, he was reportedly a fan of Bruce Lee's films, having watched The Big Boss, The Way of the Dragon, and Fist of Fury, which was his favorite. Liu recalled Mao being moved to tears and exclamations while watching Fist of Fury, saying Bruce Lee is a hero. Mao reportedly watched Fist of Fury 2 more times, a personal record. It's worth mentioning that there are some inconsistencies in Liu's account. Adolf Hitler had a passion for world domination, but was also interested in films. He had screening rooms in several of his residences and watched various movies, many of which were provided by Joseph Goebbels, the Russian Minister of Propaganda. Some of the films he is known to have viewed or owned include Gabriel over the White House, Camille, The Rider on the White Horse, Marie Antoinette, and Laurel and Hardy's Blockheads and Way Out West. Hitler's favorite film has been widely reported as King Kong, which his friend Ernst Hanf Stangl claimed he watched and talked about often. However, the accuracy of these claims has been questioned. It is known that Hitler was a fan of Disney, particularly Mickey Mouse. Goebbels gave him 12 Mickey Mouse cartoons for Christmas in 1937, which he was very happy about, and ordered 5 Mickey Mouse films a few months earlier. The next year, he ordered a print of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Many of Hitler's favorite films were little known outside of Germany, such as The Nibelungs and Karl Peters. However, one of his potential favorites was the famous film Gone with the Wind, which he reportedly watched 3 times, according to his bodyguard Rochus Misch. Goebbels also admired the film, and according to Misch, Hitler told Goebbels that Gone with the Wind is something our own people should also be able to do. Idi Amin was the despotic president of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. Tens to hundreds of thousands of people were killed by his regime, and not through indirect means like famine. Either, Amin led a military police force that perpetuated violent terror. But when he wasn't mutilating and possibly eating the bodies of dissidents, ordering public executions, or deporting Asian residents en masse, he was watching cartoons. According to his son Jafar Amin, the president loved animation, especially of the slapstick variety. Tom and Jerry was his favorite. Kim Jong-il, the future dictator of North Korea, was a movie lover to the extent of kidnapping 2 filmmakers and keeping them captive to make films for him. In 1978, he abducted Shin Sang-ok and Choi Yoon-hee and held them for 8 years. During their captivity, they produced films like Salt, Runaway, and Pulgasari, which received international recognition due to their departure from the typical propaganda style of North Korean cinema. After their escape to Austria, Shin and Choi revealed their story and Kim's movie obsession. He had a collection of 15,000 films, including his favorite Hong Kong action movies, James Bond, Rambo, and Friday the 13th. Kim's favorite actors were Elizabeth Taylor and Sean Connery. Vladimir Putin is serving his fourth term as president of Russia, and in 2021 he signed in a law that could potentially extend his reign until 2036. Before he was the world's most dangerous man, Putin was an officer in the KGB, Russia's intelligence agency. He was just a teen when he developed a desire for clandestine operations via spy books and movies. Putin specifically mentioned that The Shield and the Sword, a 1968 film about a Soviet agent who infiltrates the Third Reich, put him on a path few people wanted him to take, namely his parents. They hoped their son would have an academic career. Also among the favorite movies, a cult Soviet film about the Civil War and the role of Vasily Ivanovich Chapayev in it. The Red Army commander prepares for the decisive battle along with Commissioner Dmitry Furmanov. In 2014, during a live call-in, when asked about his favorite film, Vladimir Putin stated, "Chapayev, of course." Joseph Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union for more than 30 years, during which time he caused the deaths of millions of people. He also held significant power over the Soviet film industry, leaving his mark on many scripts. After the defeat of the Third Reich, Stalin acquired the film collection of the recently deceased Joseph Goebbels. Stalin would spend his evenings watching movies in his private screening room, with a list of favorites including The Great Waltz, Volga Volga, It Happened One Night, Charlie Chaplin films, and American westerns. Stalin was reportedly a fan of the Tarzan series, as were many in the Soviet Union at the time of his death. Russian-American Nobel laureate Joseph Brodsky wrote that the Tarzan series alone did more for the process of Stalinization than all of Khrushchev's speeches at the 20th Party Congress and beyond. Richard Nixon is most famous for his involvement in the Watergate scandal, where members of his administration committed a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. This led to his resignation, making him the only U.S. president to ever leave office in disgrace. Beyond his actions domestically, Nixon's bombing campaigns in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians. Some scholars believe that his actions in Southeast Asia were influenced by the 1970 film Patton, which is a biographical movie about a World War II general. Nixon watched the film several times before and during the Cambodia invasion, with conversations between him and U.S. Secretary of State William Rogers often involving the movie. Nixon's national security advisor Henry Kissinger believed that Nixon saw himself as a military commander similar to Patton.